And conceptually, we got to make clean our relationship to boundaries. So that's step number one.
Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about how to set healthy and supportive boundaries. One of the hardest things for leaders to do is set boundaries. And I think one of the reasons is because we actually don't fully understand the essence of boundaries, right? What are they actually designed to protect? And if we don't know what they're designed to protect, then it's going to be really difficult to set them, and even more importantly, difficult to enforce them. So you're going to learn 3 steps to set boundaries that'll help you be more productive in your professional life, but happier in your personal life.
When we are leaders, when we are serving, whether you're a mom and you're serving your family, or you are a leader in your job, occupation, and you're serving and managing a bunch of people, or you're a thought leader and you're sharing your message with a bunch of people. When we are the servers, we need input somehow. We need to protect the energy of service in order for us to continue serving. But it's really easy for leaders to not recognize their need for service. And it's really easy to deny the idea of asking for support, asking for help, because of what we make that mean. My deepest fear, at least a version of my deepest fear for the longest time, pretty much my entire life, is I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be seen as a pest. That's one of my biggest stories, one of my most cemented and rooted stories in my life, is that I'm a pest. I bother people. I don't want I think people don't want me around. They don't want to hear what I have to say. They don't want to have to deal with me, right? And that comes from, childhood, right? Like pretty much all of our stuff does. It comes from a situation when I was 6 years old. My sister, who's 10 years older than me, asked me to leave the room. And I made a choice in that moment that I must be a pest. So not wanting to bother people is a really common fear that a lot of us have. Now, if we dive into that, that means there's something going on inside of us, some kind of self-questioning about our value, if asking for support equals bothering. But here's the interesting thing. When other people ask you for help, do you consider it being bothered? So we have to take a look at the other side of our requests. I would say the majority of the time, if we're afraid of bothering other people, and then somebody asks us, or we just ask ourselves, but if somebody asks me to support them, we don't consider it bothering us, and we don't consider them a burden. But if we ask, we do consider ourselves a burden, or ourselves being a bother or bothersome. Now that can only happen because of our story to ourselves, with ourselves. That's the only way that we'll project that internal story onto other people, and we think that they will believe we are being burdensome, we are bothering them, because the act of asking for support itself is not bothering. So it's not the act of asking for a lot of us, it's how we see ourselves. And the reason I would say that most of us don't believe that other people asking us for support is bothersome or burdensome is because we like helping people. So most of us find value in helping people. That's why if somebody says, hey, can you help me with whatever? Can you help me move? Can you help me organize my thoughts? Can you help me role play something? Can you help me with the dishes? Can you help me with this? Most of the time, unless there's negative energy in that particular relationship, but most of the time we feel good about it. Why? Because we feel useful. We feel useful if we can help. And many of us derive our value from the ability to help people. So now, and please let me know if this is landing for you, because it's really important for us to understand what is the operating story or feeling or belief that's getting in the way of us really asking for what we need and getting what we need. It's such an internal conversation. So most of us want to feel useful, and being asked to help is a way for us to feel useful. So if that's the case, now I know this isn't the across the board truth for everybody. But in my experience, it is true for most people. If that's the case, then why are you denying the opportunity to give somebody else in your life the feeling of being useful? Because that's essentially what's happening. If you're afraid of asking because of what you think it means to you, but you actually enjoy helping other people because of what you think it means about you, which is you're useful, you can be helpful, you can serve people, then why would you deny somebody else to have that same feeling? That's the most selfish thing you can do, is to deny them the ability of feeling useful. We're all just hot messes as humans. All of us are some version of a hot ass mess. That's it. The temperature at which my pile steams might be slightly different than the temperature at which your pile steams, and our piles might have different shapes and sizes, but dang it if we're not all versions of a hot ass mess. So asking people for help is a gift that we give to them. The gift is they can feel useful, they can contribute, they can give us something that they believe will help us be happy, help us do something in our life, help us actually remove some of the burdens so that we can go on in a lighter way, right? So that we can do life a little bit lighter way. I mean, how many of you would not want to remove some of the burdens from somebody that you love, somebody that you like, to help their day? So we're denying other people the opportunity to do that. Most of the time when we feel like we don't have healthy boundaries, or when we feel like other people are intruding on our healthy boundaries, most of the time it's only roughly 100% our fault. That usually it's only about 100%. It usually doesn't get any higher than that, right? It's usually only 100% our fault. Now, that's empowering though. That's empowering because if you're the one that's built that wall, then you're the one that can tear it down. But what most of us are doing is we're walking around getting angry at other people for not upholding the boundaries that we haven't set. How can we get angry at other people for crossing lines they didn't know existed? For crossing lines quite often that we didn't draw? How long are we going to get angry at other people for not giving us what we haven't asked for? And then we get to walk around holding on to all of our old stories. I can't get my work done because nobody gives me the time of day, because my kids are knocking on the door, because my friends are texting me, because people keep emailing me. And whenever I have boundary conversations with my clients, meaning the boundary issues that they're having in their life, the first question I always ask is, do they know about your boundary? And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, and I'm rounding down to 9 times out of 10, the answer is a silent no. I say it's a silent no. I was about to say it's a quick no, but actually the no doesn't come out of their face very quickly. Because at first it's like, look at all these things that are happening, and look at all these people that aren't honoring my boundaries, and look at all the things that I can't get done because all of the distractions. And I'll be like, do they know? And the reaction is usually like, and then they get angry at me sometimes, right? But they can't deny the truth that a boundary uncommunicated is a boundary that doesn't exist. So if we don't have boundaries that actually exist, we can't get mad at people for not upholding them. So I want to dissect this even further and give you these 3 steps of what has to happen for you to have healthy boundaries and supportive boundaries. And conceptually, we got to make clean our relationship to boundaries. So that's step number 1. The first step is you have to identify your needs. What a lot of people are doing is setting boundaries without knowing what their needs are. Boundaries are meant to protect something. If the something hasn't been identified, then how do we know where the boundaries need to be set? And so a lot of times we're setting our boundaries out of our wounds. We're setting our boundaries out of the bleeding of our wounds. We're setting the boundaries that sound like respect. We're setting the boundaries out of vagueness. So even if the boundaries are upheld, they haven't been set with intention to protect anything. So the effect of the boundary isn't ever experienced because we don't really know what the boundary is designed to protect. So boundaries are always protecting something. The question is, what are they protecting? Are they protecting your ego or are they protecting your efficiency? Ideally, your boundaries should be protecting your efficiency. But if you don't have clarity over that, then all they're doing is protecting your ego. And I would say most of the time, because the ego sets boundaries based on its fears and doubts and insecurities, most of the time, the boundaries are being set to protect the unhealthy parts of your ego. The boundaries are being set to protect identities that need to be let go of anyway. So our boundaries are actually holding us captive to our past. And then we get frustrated that the boundaries are not working to help us birth our future. It's because the boundaries that you're setting are designed to protect the wounds. They're not designed to protect the evolution. They're not designed to protect the journey. They're not designed to protect the growth. They're designed to protect against the wounds being hurt again. So we have to be clear about our needs. And one of the things that you can use as internal language or external language if you're dealing with teams to help you shift the way you're thinking about boundaries and the way you're thinking about efficiency is remove your need to do all the work. See, the reason this is so critical is because when we're young, we are programmed to value doing things on our own. We're celebrated for doing things on our own. From our earliest days, we get celebrated for being able to walk on our own, for being able to tie our shoes on our own, for being able to ride a bicycle on our own. I mean, if you have kids that are young in your life, or you remember having kids, or you have your own childhood memories, I mean, how beautiful was it as a child, or to see a child say, look what I did all by myself, all by myself. Look at mommy, I did this all by myself. So we get programmed at a very early age that all by myself is to be celebrated. But then we're not guided into the time where we need to let that go. Because all by myself as a child is cause for celebration. All by myself as an adult is cause for deprivation. It's cause for depression. It's cause for misery. It's a recipe for unhappiness. It's a recipe for not achieving your goals. As a child, you'll get celebrated. As an adult, you'll be miserable. Because we just have so many things that we can do and that we want to do. So I don't want you to keep asking, how can I do this all by myself? I don't even want you to ask, how can I do this? I want you to ask, how can that get done? How can this get done? Don't immediately put yourself in the doing role. How can this get done? And that immediately opens up the mind to the detachment from you needing to be the doer. How can this get done? And then we've got to be open to, obviously, people helping us. And the question is, again, what are you more committed to? Are you more committed to your efficiency or are you more committed to your ego? So identify what it is that you need. Now that requires you to know a little bit about yourself. That requires you to ask yourself some questions. It requires you to consider what your purpose is. It requires you to set goals. It requires you to know what it is that you want to be efficient with. And then step number 2, and then you can identify what the boundaries are that will protect that desire, that mission, that purpose. What are the boundaries now? Without knowing what to protect, the boundaries are meaningless. They're irrelevant. Once you know what you need to protect, what you want to protect in your mission, whether it's protecting your body, protecting relationships, then you ask yourself, what are the boundaries that I need in order to protect this thing that's really important to me? And usually those boundaries are easy to identify if you know what it is that needs to be protected. It could be a certain amount of time that you want to spend in a relationship, at your business. It could be a certain kind of diet that you want to feed your body. The boundaries are actually pretty simple once the commitment is identified. And that's the word I should have used. Identify your commitment, not just your needs. So step number 1 is identify your commitment. Step number 2 is identify what that commitment needs for protection. Those are the boundaries. They usually show up very simply. And then step number 3, this is the biggest challenge for a lot of people. Step number 3 is make your boundaries known. Request with dignity. Make requests with dignity. Dignity both ways. Don't just, in a demeaning way, demand people to uphold your boundaries. Don't just say, here's what's going to happen. You're going to do this. You're not going to do that. I won't take it anymore. I'm not saying that doesn't work. It works, but it doesn't create joy for you or for the other person. It doesn't create loyalty. It doesn't create the sense of contribution. It just essentially creates a threat that will either be resisted or fulfilled, but that doesn't create connection. If you tell me your boundaries and you are very clear of what I can't do anymore, and you're very clear of what I will do, I'm not really going to bring any new ideas to this partnership that doesn't exist. I'm not really going to think, how else can I support this person getting her or his needs met? I'm not going to be ruminating on that in any kind of healthy, cooperative way. I'll probably do what you're asking me to do depending on the relationship that we have, but it won't be a cooperation. It won't be a collaboration. It'll just be demands being met, but when I walk away, you don't know what I'm saying under my breath. So if you want collaboration, make requests with dignity. Keep my dignity intact and keep your dignity intact. So don't just bow down and give people, free rein and shrink inside of your boundaries. Keep your own dignity intact too, because your commitments require dignity protection as well as time protection or money protection or whatever the boundaries are. But ask with dignity. Don't make demands. And 3 phrases that I've learned over the course of personal development, my journey, that tend to cause resistance in people is need to, have to, and should. So here's what you need to do from this point forward. You need to not call me between 7 and 9. Here's what you have to do. You have to bring this to me. You have to stay away. You have to give me what I need. And here's what you should do. You should recognize that I provide a lot for you. I mean, just think of, feel those words as I say them. And I'm not even using anything real for any of you, at least between me and you. But those words really trigger a lot of people. So here's my suggestion. Instead of making the demands and instead of using the threats, my suggestion is make a request. And when you make a request of me, if you want my collaboration and you want my support and you want my full service, then release me from your demands and allow me to meet not only your needs, but things that you might not even be thinking of right now. I'll bring my own ideas of support for you if you allow me to. So make a request, but tell me why it's so important. Because if you can tell me why it's so important to you, now my full service muscle is available. My full service mind is available. If you allow me to bring my full body of service and you tell me why it's important to you, assuming that I like you, then I will try to serve you 10 times better than what you're asking for. So you simply just say something like, you know what would be amazing? I'm really committed to starting my day with healthy routines. So if you wouldn't mind, could I make a request that when you see the light on in my room, between 7 and 7:30, if you could just not knock at that time, because I might be meditating, or I might be reading, or I might be writing, I might be praying. If you could just respect that time, and then as soon as 7:30 hits, I'm going to come check in with you and do whatever it is that you want, or whatever it is that we've previously decided on. If you give people those time boundaries and you make a request based on why it's important to you, you'll unlock something in them that making demands will never unlock. But here's the thing. You have to keep your promises, especially with kids. If you tell your kids that mommy's busy between the hours of 7 and 8, but as soon as 8 o'clock comes, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to play with you. I'm going to watch Barney with you. We're going to do that puzzle. Then at 8 o'clock, you better be done. Because if you're not done and you don't maintain the dignity of that a commitment and agreement with that other person, then the next discussion will have no meaning to it. Because you've already proven to yourself that the promises you make don't really have any relevancy here. And then the other people will usually think, well, that's because they're not important. If your agreement with me is not important, then it's just a half a step away from me deciding that in your eyes, I'm not important. And because that's so critical, don't make agreements that you can't keep. If you think it might be 8:30, tell them 9, and then show up at 8:30 if you can. You get a bonus 30 minutes. Don't tell them 8 because you're trying to protect your own ego, or you're trying to avoid some kind of conflict, and then you show up at 8:30. That's worse than say 9 and show up at 8:30. So 3 steps. Identify your commitments. Ask yourself what boundaries are needed to protect those commitments, and then request assistance with dignity. Request assistance with dignity. Make a clear request and tell them why it's important to you. So I'd love to know what you're committed to in terms of the boundaries that you need to protect something that you want, something that you want to create, something that you want to foster, something that you want to nurture. I'd love for you to let me know, what boundaries are you committed to protect, and what's the thing that you're protecting? So you could say, I'm committed to protecting the boundaries. I'm committed to creating boundaries for my morning routine to protect the energy that I start my day with. That kind of clarity is critical for yourself so that you can then request for other people.
Now, if you like this video, check out that video where I talk about how to coach using the very popular GROW model. This GROW model stands for goal, current reality, options or obstacles, and will or way forward.